Hey, folks, guess what? It's Macro Monday. Today, we're going to Boston, Massachusetts. We're going to have the Sam Adams Boston Lager by the Boston Beer Company.
Hey, everybody. It is the best Monday of the month. It is a Macro Monday, and we are excited to try another macro and let you guys know what we think about it, because we are the show where we give you our unprofessional and somewhat biased opinion about the beer we are drinking and enjoying, especially on a Macro Monday. The kids are going crazy.
Yeah.
It is just on today, so we're excited to produce another Macro Monday show for you.
They on fire.
Before we get to that, though, be sure to like, subscribe, and cheers that notification bell. Go back and check some of our other Macro Mondays. We've had a lot of fun doing this the first Monday of every month, and have tried some others in the past, and just kind of a cool way to enjoy some macros, in between enjoying some really good craft beer. Also, check us out on social media. And I've got Jay, I've got Andy in the attic. I am Ben. Red Sox suck. Go Yankees. What are we drinking today?
Today, we are going to Boston, home of the Red Sox, for the Samuel Adams Boston Lager on a Macro Monday. So let's crack this, and we're going to let Andy go off on some nerding out.
I'm going to go off. I'm going to nerd out. So it's currently the official beer of the Boston Red Sox. They dumped old Budweiser years ago and got the hometown fame. So
that seems like a no-brainer. Why was there ever anything but
money?
Sam Adams.
So if y'all see, I have got
look
Sam
at your
Adams
special glass.
Wow. I got this guy at one of the first statewide beer fests in Mississippi. It was the 25th anniversary glass that they did.
Wow.
They were founded, Boston Beer Company, in 1984. So this had to be 2009. I was down in Jackson for the convention with our friend Joey, and they gave out the glasses. So,
well, yeah, I think that's, if there is one thing I can say that Sam Adams has produced that's kind of cool, it's the glasses, right? I mean,
yeah, and I'll get into that.
Kind of
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this. Cheers.
Dive in, y'all.
Cheers, mates.
So this is a Vienna style lager. So different from other lagers we've had, because it's going to be a little maltier, low to medium hop bitterness. Particularly, this is 5%, 30 IBUs, SRM of 11.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Always like it when we get the SRMs.
Yeah.
Sam Adams putting it out there.
Wow.
Yeah, about
that's
that.
Cool.
They putting out the stats. It uses 2-row pale malt and caramel 60 malt. And they go, and an interesting thing. Okay, so the founder, Jim Coe, there was a couple other founders, but he is like the guy. And I think there's only one other who's still on. He goes to Bavaria, out to Germany every year, just to make sure that the malts, and he uses the Hallertau, they're German noble malts. They're Hallertau, Mittelfrau, and Tettnanger. I don't know if that's the proper pronunciation, but they're German noble malts. And so he actually goes out there and just makes sure that they're the quality that he wants. And every Boston lager that is produced, every batch, he personally samples and tastes to make sure it's up to the standards.
I mean, that sounds like a really great tax write-off to me. Just a trip to Germany to make sure he gets the malts. I mean, I think we probably need to speak to an accountant, see how we can finagle something like that for Hopped Up Beer Review, and make a trip to Germany or anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
So
Oktoberfest would be pretty sweet,
It would. We'll have to talk to corporate about how we can work that out. So
do some R&D.
or even just a
Absolutely.
couple brew fest or festivals.
Yeah, anything. So cool.
So Sam Adams Boston Lager is the flagship beer. And interesting, I did not know this. The recipe comes from it was a recipe developed in 1860. Jim Coe was in his dad's attic. He was going around his dad's attic and stumbled upon a recipe from his great grandfather, who
three? No,
great. He said great grandfather. I mean, Jim Coe's no spring chicken. So the original recipe, like I said, developed in 1860 in St. Louis, Missouri, by Lewis Coe, and he sold it under the name Lewis Coe Lager until Prohibition struck in 1920. So he, like I said, he came across it. He was living in Boston at the time. Jim Coe is originally from Cincinnati, living in Boston. He went to Harvard, got his undergrad MBA and JD from Harvard.
wow.
And he was not even in the beer industry, but he's a sixth generation family brewer. So, they had brewing in their blood. His dad was an apprentice at a brewery. Let me get this right. The Hudepol Scholing Brewery in Cincinnati in the 1940s. So his dad was apprenticing there. So, and it came to be, he wanted to produce something different than what you could get. And, he kind of, on their website, they attribute him to helping the craft beer revolution spread throughout the United States. This is 1984, 1985. So
Right.
He developed this, he brewed it. I want to get this right. And 6 weeks after introducing this to the public, he entered it in to the Great American Beer Festival in Denver, and it won the best beer in America. The same.
Wow. After 6 weeks.
Yeah. So, they produced it. They're like, okay, let's enter this in the competition. And it's won that 3 other times since then, the, best beer in America. That just overall category is no longer, in effect. I think they break it down into other categories. So, at the time, I guess there, the amount of breweries that we know about today, at that time, there wasn't as many. So,
no, this was this was your craft back then. I mean,
mm-hmm.
You had your mass producers like we're used to, your Coors, your Buds, your Michelobs, but Sam Adams, when we were younger, I mean, that's always what I thought of would be your kind of crafts, because they had other ones like Cherry Wheat and some of the others
mm-hmm.
that were introduced. So
yeah.
That's way cool, Andy. I mean, we've had 2 or 3 of those where recipes have been found. It seems like, I think that's what Ben was raising his eyebrows at. Another 1 or 2 that we've sampled where the recipe was found from ages ago and then recreated. So yeah.
It's I know we say that's Macro Monday and everybody thinks of them as macro. Interestingly enough, it's written down as a regional brewery, which I don't agree with. So when they started in Boston, they started a little bit, but then the majority of their production, he was contracted in other breweries. And through the years, he's changed multiple locations throughout the U.S. For a while, he did in Pittsburgh, then in Portland. Those 2 are no longer in production. Then he did Cincinnati. He actually bought that old brewery in Cincinnati that his dad worked at to produce Boston Lager. After contracting with them for years, then he just ended up buying it. Now they're in the process of expanding it, and I'll get into that in a minute. And they bought the one in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, the old Schaefer Beer Company brewing.
Schaefer
with the Ducks.
He contracted with that for a while, and then they own that now.
Sounds like he just wants to see parts of the world too. And
so everybody thinks, it's Sam Adams, it's in Boston. No, that's pretty much Boston is just the research and development They 2/3 of all the beer, and that covers the Boston Beer Company's all their brands, is out of the one in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley. And what is that? Briningsville?
Yeah, that sounds right. I read it as
Yeah.
well.
So, we talked earlier about Dogfish Head. In 2019, Boston Beer Company brought them in as a subsidiary, so they own that. I didn't know about these. Let me read this: Twisted Tea, Angry Orchard, Truly Hard Seltzer, Coney Island Brewery, Angel City Brewery, Bevy Long Drink, and of course Dogfish Head. They have over 60 styles of beer and all their brands. It's
wow. I did not know they owned Coney Island. I've been to that brewery.
And there's another one in Miami. There's like Concrete something. There was a couple others and they still consider themselves a regional. Brewery.
They've left themselves alone and let those guys still brew their own recipes. They just give them the backing. I mean, it's essentially like if you were a private equity backed or a venture capital backed. I mean, that's what they've done is they've taken those brands, they own them, and then they just continue brewing because the people love them. And it opens the distribution networks, which is the biggest channel. I mean, that's what Dogfish, when I read the article, and I was semi-disappointed when Dogfish sold because I thought, Lord, this is going to kill their brand. They're not going to have the creativity that they did. But Samuel Adams, to their credit, said that we will leave them alone, and we don't want to diminish that creativity. We just want the brand. We want to open the distribution channels that we have across the country for them, and they've done that. Some of the others I don't think have been as successful because you see the other macros like Anheuser, Michelob and some of the others. They buy up the microbreweries or the smaller breweries, and they try to continue some of the lines. And we've seen a couple, like I think InBev was one that had some. Colorado Native was actually owned by, I think, Coors. So it's an interesting dynamic to see. And I think that's what a lot of small breweries hope to achieve at some level is taking their brewery and selling it off to a large brewery for the distribution network.
Yeah.
So gives them the money, it gives them everything that, they can still have their label, but they get the payout. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So we talked earlier about the glass, and in past episodes, the style glass, does it enhance the flavor? It's like, well, they put a lot of research into their glasses. So they developed this, they wanted the narrow base so that when you're holding it, you don't heat it up because there's less surface area, less of the beer is down here.
Right.
You don't heat up the beer. They've got the wide bulb. I don't know what part of the glass you call that traps the aroma, and then it filters it into this small, a narrow neck, and then the lip that flares out. It helps to put it over the palate into the parts of the tongue that can get all the different multi flavors. They put a lot of money. They brag about it on their website. They put $1 million into development on a can, and they have a specialty can that they made. And I was looking about this. So in most cans, where you pop the top, well, the opening of, the mouth of it is pushed back a little bit. And then they also, like this is flared out. They flare it out a little bit so that it hits a different part of your palate. So you get all the malt aromas and flavors and all. So it's,
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, they had laser etching on the bottom of the glass to help produce more. And it's interesting when I look at it, and you're not gonna be able to see this really, but if you still see it, there's lines of carbonation, of it going up. And
in comparison, if you can, I could kind of see it in your glass there.
Yeah.
There's there's some, but there's very, very little in my glass.
They say it's just to continue bringing up
all of it.
Bringing the aroma up.
Yeah. Wow. Well, definitely kudos to them for that, in the sense that, this is when 20 years ago, when we were drinking beer. like Jay said, this was craft. This is what you thought of as the beer that was different than all the rest. And I think that there's no denying from what we would consider a macro that these guys are obviously macro. I mean, where can you not go in the world and get a Sam Adams? So I mean, there's tribes in Brazil that haven't been introduced to the world. That's probably the only place. Everywhere else you can get a Sam Adams if you want one. So I think that definitely an obvious macro for us to do a macro Monday. But again, to the point, I mean, 30, 40 years ago, the craft beer was nothing like what it is in the U.S. today. So, if nothing else, definitely, kudos to Sam Adams for kind of pushing that craft beer, that craft beer and providing something that's a little bit different. And as we're recording this, I just got a notification that the Yankees beat the Red Sox on my phone. So,
I think it's time to rate her.
Man, I think this beer tastes so much better right now, just because of that news. So, it's not that may influence my score, and that is where the unprofessional and somewhat biased will definitely come in.
Well, I'm really not done nerding out because I went down a hole for rabbits today and found out more information. I was like, let me read about the actual Sam Adams and all. So
do we need to pause here and let our viewers get another beer if they're drinking one while they're watching?
No.
Okay.
Nobody's watching us.
Nobody
cares.
That's right. That's you too.
So, what do y'all know about the actual Sam Adams, the person?
He was a brewer.
That's one thing we think. And anything else that you can think about him?
Did he sign the Declaration of Independence?
He was a founding father. Yes, he was in the Continental Congress. He was a politician in Massachusetts. So and he's a second cousin to John Adams. We associate him as a brewer. And the more I read is, he wasn't technically a brewer. He was a maltster. And there were people in his family that did some brewing, but he wasn't the most successful of people. He didn't put a high value on money, and he didn't make good business decisions. And so eventually at one point he started working for his father at they produced malt for brewing, and they were considered maltsters, but he really didn't have his own brewery or anything like that. So, and a lot of the evidence and the research shows that he worked in a place to, produce the malt for brewing. So they don't consider him a brewer, they consider him a maltster.
So is there any indication as to why the Boston Brewing Company chose Sam Adams as their name for?
He was a revolutionary. He wrote a lot in the papers, and he wrote a lot of articles to kind of drive the anti-British sentiment. He was instrumental in the Boston Tea Party. A lot of people kind of see him as the reason why the Boston Massacre actually occurred. It's been written that he stirred up people to, rise up and revolt, and the British came and tried to calm them down. But, it depends on which side that you read the reviews on. Whether you're reading the British side, whether you're reading, but he did write a lot in those the papers at the time.
All right, interesting.
He's a stirrer.
So what I read from that is that, hey, maybe he wasn't what we expect him to be, or thought he should be, or was, or whatnot. So maybe one day there'll be a hopped up beer review beer, just because we're not really good at what we do, but people will associate us with beer, and that'll be that, right?
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time for us to go through and actually rate this one. We've nerded out quite a bit, but that's okay because macros have a lot of information where sometimes the craft do not. So we like to provide as much as we can. And, hey, we're learning right along with you guys watching this video, and hope you guys are enjoying that part of it too. With that being said, Jay, what do you think about the Boston Lager?
Quick to the point, 6.0.
6.0. Okay. All right. Andy, what say you?
You're going to go.
I'm going to go. Okay. Well, like I said,
Yankees scum.
the Yankees won, according to the notification I got. So this tastes infinitely better. The score is going to be so much better than it would have been. That being said, the beer is very malty. It's definitely that's the overall taste that I get from the beer itself. I'll be the first one to say I have never, throughout all of my beer drinking years, Sam Adams has never been my favorite. I can't say that I've had a Sam Adams beer that I'm excited to order again. That's just the way I feel about their beer, because I just haven't found that one yet. So I've had the Boston Lager before, and had it on draft, had it in the bottle, had it multiple times. It's for a macro, it's not bad. I definitely like the malt taste because that's what I enjoy in a lot of beers. There's something about it though that's just like that little, as we've called it before, that little twang about it to some degree, to me, that just is off just a little bit. So for me, it's okay. I'm going to drink it if somebody hands it to me. It's a 5.
Don't worry, they're not worried about your review to hurt their sales. So you can give us your true opinion. I was trying to think of the last time I had one. And when I looked at my Untapped, the last logging I had, I think I only had 2. And the last one was 7 years ago. It was about this time in 2015. And I can remember, us growing in a beer wasteland, which, in college and even immediately after, all we had was just light beers, and then the macro pale lagers and pilsners and things like that. So no flavor, appeased to the masses. And then when I would try Sam Adams, I can remember thinking, God, this is hoppy, compared to that.
Yeah.
And now that I have it again, and I've had so many more craft beers, and I've learned more about the styles and what they put in, and it, like you said, it tastes maltier. And to me, I don't recall it tasting so malty, but I've learned so much through the years. And I'm gonna say, I wrote it off so much, but I'm gonna give it a lot more credit than I used to. I will say Sam Adams, on a macro level, does put a higher quality beer forward than a lot of the macros we did. I would probably have it again. I may not pass it up. If I see it on a limited list, I might get it, but a lot of times I'm going to go with something else over it. But I won't put it down so bad. I think a lot goes into it, and the more I read about it and what they did for it, so I'm going to give it a 7.0. And wow. I will, malty goodness, and when I need a beer, and it'll help to crave a beer need.
All right, that is a 6 for the Sam Adams Boston Lager here on Macro Monday. Again, first Monday of every month, we review a macro, and this is no exception. Definitely, I don't know, if you've not had Sam Adams in a while, the Boston Lager, check it out. Let us know what you think. If you've had it recently, hey, leave us a comment. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong. It's all opinion here, right? Somewhat biased and unprofessional at that. But definitely one to give a shot and try. For Jay in his hideous Red Sox shirt, and Andy in the attic for his hideous Red Sox hat, I am Ben. Go Yankees. That's all I got left.
Cheers,
Cheers, mates.
mates.
Cheers, mates. 3 wrongs make a 6.